Act like I know what I'm talking about. All right, what's up, man? Welcome to the House of Hoosier podcast. I'm your host, AJ Guyton. I'm with my main man, Austin Render, rocking the Field of 68 t-shirt, man. We just witnessed an awesome double overtime game, man. What did you think? What are your initial thoughts, man?
What a crazy game. I mean, I there were so many times where I thought, all right, Syracuse has got this one, they'll put it away. And then Indiana fought back. And there's going to be a lot of things we talk about today, AJ, that were negatives. And the turnovers, some of the free throw shooting, the stagnant offense at times. But the fact that this team pulled themselves from 18 down at about the 18-minute mark to tied at the 11-minute mark was truly extraordinary. And I don't think that previous Indiana teams under previous regimes are making that sort of comeback. And I think if you didn't think Mike Woodson could coach entering today, I think today was proof he can coach the heck out of that team.
Man, part of coaching is letting your players play basketball. I mean, that's the part of coaching. Everybody thinks coaching is controlling everything and you run this play and run that play. It's identifying players on the recruiting trail that you don't have to control, that you don't have to coach, that you only have to just maintain a little bit. And they go out there and they make basketball plays. You put them in position to make the plays, and they make the plays. And that's what was impressive about IU's comeback, man. They're getting all the shots that they wanted. They were taking those shots. They were making some of them, but as I'm watching the game, I had never seen Syracuse play. I noticed that their zone played into the hands and the strengths of the IU's basketball team. I mean, you got shooters on the outside. You miss a shot. That's where the game began for Indiana. Or you hit the high post and you play the 2-on-1 game. That's Indiana's strength. And Race Thompson and TJD did a great job of continue to attack that thin back line from Syracuse. But in the end, we just can't commit some of the fouls that we committed. And you work that hard to get to that position. You get a touch foul on Parker Stewart, free throws. You get a touch foul on Race Thompson, free throws. Then you get a foul with Lander at the end, fouling. People don't think it's a foul, but he hit his arm. It's a foul. If you were a home team, you would have wanted that call as well. And that's what ends the game. So it was tough loss, but I saw a lot of positive things with this new Indiana team.
Yeah, well, that was a tough play at the end because it looked like Trace had him pretty well bodied up,
Yeah, he
and
did.
Lander comes in trying to make the hero play.
I'm gonna tell you this real quick. I'm gonna
Yeah,
tell you this. The biggest one of the biggest things defensively I took away was and it ended up beating them in the end was the over helping. Indiana was over helping, giving up shots all night long. And I'm a proponent of guard your yard, guard the man in front of you, make them take tough shots. They make them, you slap them on the behind, you say, great job. But we over helping. And in that position, Trace did a great job of going vertical, going straight up, making him take a tough shot. And here comes Lander from the top of the key, trying to block it from the back. It's like sometimes you got to understand when that's not the moment when and you catch his hand, inadvertently catches his arm and it's a foul. So that's what the over helping is one of the areas I think Coach Woodson to clean up.
well, it was an interesting play. Indiana tried to put pressure on Syracuse in the backcourt, and that looks really good if you force a turnover or you make them take a bad shot. But Syracuse broke that initial double, and it resulted in that layup that got a foul. It
Yeah.
was interesting. Indiana forces overtime with free throws. It nearly forced triple overtime with free throws, and so it
Mhm.
finally bites Indiana the other way, where
Right.
Syracuse wins the game with free throws. You texted me there in second overtime. You're like, this is slowly turning into bad basketball. It
Yeah,
wasn't pretty.
you're right.
Do you want to talk about the negatives, or actually no? We should start by talking about Trace because he was phenomenal in this game. And there was a point there with about 4 minutes to go where I turned and thought, yeah, that might be it for him. And I said, the season is literally laying on the ground in pain right now.
You're right.
And he comes back in not 2 minutes later. And not only does he come in, he's throwing down ferocious dunks like nothing happened. He goes for 30 again. And my gosh, I just don't think there's anyone that can defend him.
Yeah, he had a great game, man. He just plays with a high motor this year. He's in tip-top shape. He's attacking the basket on all levels. He's attacking with his patented left-hand sweep. He's attacking on the offensive glass. He's attacking. Everything's a dunk. You can tell he's like, okay, I'm going to dunk everything. I'm going to try to at least. And, and he's inspiring that, the Hoosiers. He's inspiring. That's what you have to do as a leader, especially in a situation where you guys have a new coach and things are swirling around you brand new. Somebody got to step up and take the lead, and he definitely did that. And I told you, I tweeted out, man, I went upstairs, I saw him twist his ankle, twist his knee or whatever, and I was like, oh man, prayers. I hope he didn't catch that meniscus a la Russell Westbrook in the playoffs a few years ago, and that turned into a surgery for it. So I'm like, oh man. Then I go up, come back, get my studio set up, and he's drop step dunking, and I'm like, that's the kids today, man. And my daughter did the same thing in a game the other night. I thought she was done, and she come back, scored 20 points. I'm like, well, what was that all about? You know what I mean? So, but great leadership. I'm enjoying watching him play, man, and him and Race creating that chemistry that's important against the zone, and just continue to develop the other guys. Xavier, he didn't play. It wasn't out on the floor again very long. Just has to understand when to be aggressive, when to lay off. This last foul was I felt like was a ghost call, but when you pick up cheap ones, that end up biting you in the end. Stewart shot the ball well. I mean, we'll get into that. I'm going a little fast, but I'll let you carry over. I think
You're knocking off all my bullet points here
yeah. I want to stop, but TJD is definitely the brightest star right now for Indiana basketball.
Or for those joining us, if you do want to ask AJ a question, drop it in the chat. We'll get to it here as we go through our live show. Again, House of Hoosier going live for the first time this season with AJ Guyton. And we talk about the 31 points, 16 rebounds for Trayce Jackson-Davis. I don't think we can gloss over the way that Miller Kopp played in this game, a new career high, 28 points, hit 4 huge three-pointers in the game, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. He feels like he is going to be a Hoosier fan favorite with the way he plays basketball.
I mean, you look at Miller, man, he looks like the old school Indiana basketball player, 6'5", 6'6", good hair, unathletic, you know what I mean? But using the fundamentals to get himself shots, taking good, clean looks, being efficient, defending competitively. You guys, we'll continue to work on staying in front of the ball. He plays that tough position of the wing where you're going to get those athletes that are relentless in pushing the basketball, running the floor, and attacking the basket. Has to get better in that area. But, he showed moxie tonight, knocking down those 3 free throws to send it into another overtime. Didn't blink, didn't wince. So there's a lot of positives when it comes to Miller Kopp and Trayce Jackson-Davis's performance too.
Yeah, and I know people are going to tune in here and they're going to be like, why are you guys talking about all the great things that happened in this game? IU lost. But I'm going to keep harping on it. That's a game that I think a year or two ago, they don't come back. And I know it's like we don't want moral victories with this team, but it's early in the season. It was your first road test. And no, this is not a good Syracuse team. And I don't think this will shine well come the end of the season. It won't be an amazing loss, but I just think the fight that this team shows is something that you can get behind. And it's something that you can't coach.
Yeah, I mean, I just think we're and our fans, a lot of times we're in the microwave society. We think we get a new coach, we should automatically be up there with the top 2-3 teams in the country. It just doesn't work that way. It's a lot of work to do. And here was a step. You take a step in the Big Ten ACC Challenge, go on the road. You play in a tough environment. Anybody who's ever played in a dome understands the adjustments you have to make shooting the basketball with no backdrop, and just understanding that playing against a team that is not a strong Syracuse team, not as strong as they've been in the past. There used to be a lot of athletes on those wings, of big time athletes and NBA draft picks on the back line, and it wasn't there this year. So you look at it and say, well, they should have beat this team. But when you're a team that is just trying to discover who you are, and only the road can tell you who you are. Everybody can play at home and have great games, but when the chips are down and it's a violent atmosphere and everybody's against everybody in red, then you get to see who steps up in those moments. And I saw a lot of guys knocking down quality shots, making quality plays. Once again, we talked about this in the first few podcasts. I always talk about that number 80. I said, we got to be able to score. Forget all this defensive talk. When it comes down to it, you got to put the ball in a basket. And I think Indiana showed that part. They will always tighten up their defense with a coach like Mike Woodson, with Dane Fife on the bench, with the assistant coaches that they have. They will tighten that up. I'm not worried about that. But now we know they can put up points, and they can put up points in a hurry.
I mean, some of these numbers are really good. 55% from the floor, 41% from the three, 74% from the free throw line isn't bad. I like that they got there 31 times, albeit it was not my favorite officiated game in the world both
Right.
ways. There were 65 free throws in this game, which is kind of absurd.
Right.
And they out-rebounded them 46-31. The
Right.
issue, AJ, is what we have talked about several times on this podcast, and it continues to be the turnovers. And it's something that Mike Woodson said after was that the Louisiana game that they had 25. And he said, we don't want this to become a habit.
Right.
That's something that is very important, because it does feel like a lot of times this team plays loose with the basketball. And sometimes it's them, you can see the brain churning, like it's Lander driving and trying to bounce pass when he should have lobbed it, or it's Grace Thompson trying to make the extra pass. It's just a poorly placed pass.
Right.
The intention is there, but it's still sloppy, and 26, whether you go to double overtime or not, is too many.
Yeah, 26 turnovers is way too much. And I know, people listening are going, oh, they're talking about they playing good. They had 26 turnovers. It's like, it's about progression. It's about, okay, what were the turnovers? How the turnovers earlier in the game were just straight nerves turnovers. You can just see it. They're trying to get this is the first true road test against a formidable Syracuse ACC opponent. So you can see it. But then once they got settled in, it's about, just trying to make plays that aren't there all the time. And those turnovers and things, those are things you can control. You can begin to control those things. So that's why we're optimistic about where they were, and they're battling. They're going to go to the film. They're going to see all these turnovers. They're going to see, the isolation, the overhelping, and then they're going to kick themselves behind, because those were the opportunities for them to win. You can't give them 26 extra possessions and think that you're going to, beat somebody on the road. But, we're erring on the side of being cautious about this team as it grows and it finds out who the true rotation is, because you saw Bates was out of the lineup a little bit. Geronimo was out this time. He tightened it up. That's what the road does for you. It shows you who's going to be there, who can work out their nerves and play and remain poised on the road. And we saw, a glimpse of what we're going to see in the future coming in the Big Ten.
Yeah, the bench and the youngsters were not ready for that zone in the first half. They struggled mightily against it. I will say, when he was in the game, Xavier Johnson showed flashes of why he is, and he has for 2 straight games now, shown why he is the point guard for this team. He had 9 assists in this game, only 3 turnovers, which in the grand scheme of things, with everyone's struggles, a 9-to-3 ratio is pretty good. The issue is 26 minutes of the 40, or of the, what they play, 50? Yeah, 26 of the 50 minutes, he fouled out. He only took 2 shots from the floor. And then you get Finney coming in 14 minutes and fouling out. And now all of a sudden it's a very young and inexperienced Christian Lander having to run the point, which I thought for the most part he did a good job of. He had a big 3 there in double overtime. He handled it with some good poise. Obviously the foul at the end was a huge miscue, but we're Housing Hoosier live right now here, recapping 112-110 loss to Syracuse. If you're joining us and you want to ask a question, drop into the chat. We'll get AJ to answer anything you guys want him to touch on. We're talking about the turnovers right now. It was sloppy in this game. I'm looking at Race Thompson had 7. Trace Jackson Davis had 6. I mean, there's 13 coming from your 2 front court guys. And as good as they are in points and rebounds, you can't have 13 turnovers between those 2.
I mean, as you talked about earlier, this wasn't one of Syracuse's best basketball teams. So 26 turnovers against this particular team is unacceptable. And it's going to, as they continue to move on in the season, it's going to continue. It's going to get worse. If you're going to turn the ball over 18, 15 times against a good basketball team, you're gonna be down by 20 and not going into double overtime. So that's the being realistic about today's game. But you have to continue to try to make plays. Xavier Johnson, he's not gonna help us sitting on the bench. Those 9 assists, those 3 turnovers, that was great. But he's not on the floor, and he needs to be on the basketball floor. He needs to stop picking up cheap fouls, trying to be extremely aggressive. They call those fouls. This is not the 90s or the 80s. This is now where they call hand checking, body checking. We need you on the basketball floor. So he can't help us from there, but allowed Christian Lander to come in, and he was solid. I thought he was solid aside from the turnover, trying to get it to TJD. It was a good turnover. He was trying to feed it to his big guy for a dunk, which get him going. Knocked down a 3-point basket, kind of fiddled around with it at the end of the regulation, one of the overtimes to get a shot, and just didn't get him into offense. But I like him in the lineup. I want to see him get more minutes. Fantasy is obviously hobbled. And when he comes in, he hasn't been as effective. I think it's time you give Lander a nice shot at this thing. So there's a lot of small positives coming out of it, but that 26 turnovers has to get all the way down, and I think they understand that.
You brought up on one of our pods earlier this year about how the ball tends to stick a little bit in the hands of Rob Finney, and I really saw that today. I thought when Xavier was in the game, the ball was zipping around. I thought Miller Kopp was fantastic at figuring out where the ball needed to go to beat that zone.
Right.
I thought Race Thompson was really good flashing to the middle. And when Rob was in the game, it just felt like at times it just stuck on the wing or it stuck up top and nothing was happening. And I thought Lander did a pretty good job of moving it as well in his time in the game. Just to note, we quote from Trace Jacks Davis after the game, he did say his knee is totally fine, just banged into another player and hurt really bad for a minute or two. So that's good. Obviously, he was dunking and everything afterwards. So we figured he was fine, but he said it himself. I mean, this is you mentioned the overtime play, so we should talk about it. We shouldn't dive away from this. I mean, that was bad.
Right.
Like the announcer said, I don't know what Mike Woodson had drawn up, but that wasn't it. I mean, was that? To me, it looked like Lander forgot how much time was on the clock. Was that what you saw?
I really thought he forgot the play. That's what it looked like to me. I think he forgot what it was supposed to initiate the basketball play, because it looked like he was supposed to dribble to the right wing, either use a ball screen from TJD to get him rolling or hand off, and he tried to get it to the final part of the play, and it was just too much traffic over there. So I think he just, that's what happens when you get a young guy. That's why I think he needs to get more minutes and be in those situations, and he'll handle them better. So, at the end of the day, it didn't hurt anything. We went into overtime, but as a coach, you always want to get a shot up in that situation, man. And one thing about Syracuse in that zone, man, you have to give big credit to Jim Boeheim, because most coaches, when they start getting that zone busted up, as they start getting it busted up a little bit in the second half, they abandon it. You have to have some type of confidence, man, and he has over the last 40 years of sticking with it, and what it does, it allows the offense to catch a rhythm against it, and that's what you saw. You saw struggles early, and then they figured it out. Okay, we can get corner jump shots, we can get mid-range floaters, and we can get lobs to TJD, and we can offensive rebound. So, that's the negative part of playing the zone the whole time, but they stick with it, and they play the percentages, man. You got to give it up to Syracuse.
How about this stat, AJ? Indiana was 20 of 27, 74% from the floor in the second half. It's hard to believe you lose a game where you shot 75% in a half of basketball. That is absolutely bizarre.
Right.
But yeah, that's a good point. Maybe he did just forget that. To me, it was like he started backing it out, and I was like, "Ooh, what's he doing? There's only 3 seconds left."
Yeah, man.
I thought maybe he was at least just gonna take the 3-point shot.
Right. Yeah. Get a shot up. That's what coaches want, man. Don't try to force feed it to somebody. Get a shot up. Penetrate. He's always taught, when you get stuck, man, you either shoot it or get to the basket and make a play happen for yourself or someone else. And that's just experience, man. And that's just what it boils down to. Like we talked about earlier, man, we're in a microwave society, man. We want to be number one in the country today. and it's just not where we are, man. Our rivals Purdue, they're sitting, everybody's looking up at them like, oh, yeah, man, that's built over time, man. Painter did a great job of recruiting, keeping those guys together, putting his superstar on the bench. He's coming off the bench, and he's got such a great culture that it doesn't matter. And unfortunately, that's what we want to build up to. But it's gonna take this year being, an opportunity to get better. It's gonna take winning games like that on the road, playing games like that. That's why I love games like that, because you get to really find out about yourself now when you're beating people about 40.
Yeah, Matthew Shank said it in the chat. We lost, but we learned what it takes to win.
That's what
And
I'm talking about,
yeah,
Matt.
that's certainly a good way to look at it. And I appreciate Matthew's upbeat perspective of what happened tonight. OG, a big Cuse fan, said, I have no idea what happened. Can someone explain? It is crazy. I mean, Syracuse should have won this game in regulation.
Right.
There's no reason that game should have gone to overtime. And obviously, credit to Parker Stewart, hit a big three.
Right.
And Trace hits the free throws, gets the offensive rebound. And actually, a very good missed free throw by Christian Lander. That's not easy to do.
And a grown man offensive rebound by
it
Trace to put it into the first overtime. Man.
He is a grown man.
Yeah, and Matthew's right, man. We lost, but we learned what it takes to win. That's what we're trying to learn. We ain't learned it yet, but that was a step in the right direction, because they're going to look at that film and they're going to look at all those mistakes. They're going to look at all those overhelps, all those Buddy Boeheim. And then at the end of the day, defense comes about getting down on getting down the stance and getting a stop. Yep. It's about shutting the guy like, it's not like he's jet quick. It's not like he got white chocolate handles. He just back you down and shoot over you. What can we do to stop that? So I understand. And big Cuse fan, you missed a heck of a game, OG. You got to pull that tape out, man. You missed a heck of a game. Syracuse won the game twice, pretty much. So we're Indiana guys, so we're trying to figure out what we got to do to get better.
But again, like to Matthew's point, they made so many mistakes throughout the game, but in crunch time, Trace Jackson, or let's go all the way back. Parker Stewart hits a big three toward the end of regulation. Then Trace gets a rebound and hits the 2 free throws in crunch time. That's huge. That's learning how to try and at least close out or force overtime of a game. In overtime, no, the offensive play didn't work, but before that, they got a stop, and Miller Kopp got a big rebound to give Indiana a chance. That was a huge defensive stop. And then in double overtime, it looked like they were going to pull away. They took the first 4 points of double overtime. It looked like they were putting their foot down, and then Syracuse stormed ahead. But then Lander hits a big 3 and gives Indiana a chance. And you have to give him a lot of credit for that as well. They didn't get the stops, though, that they needed coming down the stretch of the game. But it was just a really interesting game from start to finish, because Indiana could have lost in regulation. They get a chance, then they should have won in overtime, and then they give Syracuse another chance. If you're in the audience right now, feel free to hop in the chat, ask us some questions. We're House of Hoosier going live. First time this year, hopefully first time of many. That AJ hit the live button here.
And shout out to my man Step Through, Purdue fan. I got major respect for AJ, major respect for all teams in the Big Ten, man. And
Purdue lit it up tonight.
Yep, and they lit it up tonight. Great basketball team, great organization, man. And we love we're getting back up there. It's gonna be a dogfight when IU does play.
Absolutely, I think this is gonna be a fun year.
I'm actually excited to watch that game this year.
Yes,
I wasn't excited to watch those other games. Purdue was phenomenal. Matt Painter's done an outstanding job of building that program. We talked about that earlier, man. I don't know what my man Step Through is talking about. Who's underperforming for us? But
he's saying Rob's underperforming.
Oh, Rob is okay. Why is he saying he's a traitor? I don't know.
Because he's from West Lafayette.
Okay.
Step Through wanted him to be a Boilermaker.
Oh, got you, man. Come on, man. Let that go. You got the number 2 team in the country, man.
We're not a Purdue podcast, but they did look very good tonight.
Respect for them, respect. But
but I am excited for that. I think definitely the matchup in Assembly Hall. Mackey's a tough place to play, but when they come to Assembly Hall, I think the students are going to be ready, and I think this team is ready to end that losing streak. A little bit of Michigan, Ohio State that we just saw on Saturday.
Your team's like when you play number 2 team in the country, you just got to worry about playing with too much emotion. You got to
Mhm.
calm yourself down. They beat you down 9 times in a row, whatever it is. You got to calm yourself down and play the basketball game and execute the game plan. And that's kind of the only worry about, when we match up against Purdue later in the year, is that they're just overexcited. But games like this, playing a team in the dome, playing on your first true road game, you know, everybody you had an NBA stat line. You had guys with 25, 30, 15 and 10, 12, and all these things. But you had also guys making, elementary mistakes, So what you have to focus on is just eliminating those elementary mistakes, focus on the good things that you did this game, and move forward. And I think that, with that staff and Coach Woodson, they'll do just that.
Yeah, this is an important stretch for Indiana because they're going to have Penn State, or no, sorry, Nebraska coming up on Saturday, and then a road trip to Wisconsin next week. So you'd love to start 2-0 in the Big Ten with two good opportunities for this team to kind of show some improvement. How about Syracuse coming out at the start of this game, AJ, in a 1-3-1? They
Yeah,
went
man.
to 2-3.
I think it surprised Indiana. I don't know. It
Yeah.
just looked like it because attacking a 1-3-1 zone defense with a one guard front is kind of something you usually don't do unless you're setting screens on the ball and you're trying to get your guard into penetration, getting them in the lane. So our media was like, we need to just all you need is a baseline runner. And you need a two-guard front, and you'll eat that alive. And I think they didn't. They don't know if they went strictly to a two-guard front, but they did move the basketball over to the side and try to enter it into the post, the high post, which actually created the same thing that the two-guard front would create. And that's how Kopp and Stewart were able to get rolling. They started to get in there, make quick decisions. You got to be patient. You got to be poised when you catch that basketball in the middle. I don't think fans and people understand how much pressure it feels when you catch the ball in the middle of the zone because everybody just turns and just focuses on you. So
Yep.
you got to be poised, patient, and then pick apart that defense with that poise and patience. And I think Race, they got comfortable with it, and he started to make good decisions in the middle. I love how they moved TJD down to the dunker spot sometimes as well, because that's where you get that 2-on-1 with that, with Race and TJD. And if he's not open, then the opposite corner is going to be open every single time. So, I mean, there's just so much you can cover in a zone. And I think IU exposed that. This is not the 7'2" wingspan zone that you see from Syracuse with the great athletes in the first round draft pick. It's just not what you see. So they were able to score more than enough points to win. Just too many turnovers and too many untimely fouls, especially when Syracuse got in the bonus.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew just put in the chat, they looked really good in the first 12 minutes of that second half. Indiana did offensively, and I think Miller Kopp kind of showed you why we should be excited about him coming to Indiana because he was the perfect type of guy. And I know my playing days really extensive, AJ, almost as good as yours. I was a middle school bench warmer.
All
But
right.
in practice, I was the guy who ran the baseline against 2-3 zones.
Oh, okay.
So I loved that whenever somebody would find me cutting to the basket. And Jimmy Dykes pointed it out in the broadcast. He said, I cannot believe how fast Trace Jackson Davis is. And I was noticing that too. He has such a good first step. Even when he gets the ball at the high post, he explodes to the rim. And like you said earlier, it looks like he wants to dunk literally every shot.
Yeah, he has the quickest first step towards the left hand that we see in college basketball, man. And he has a quick jump and a quick second jump.
Yeah.
And he's a willing rebounder. He wants to go get rebounds, and that's just kind of rare when it comes to big men in college basketball. Everybody want to step out. Everybody want to be a stretch 5, stretch 4. He's really embracing being the anchor both defensively and offensively when it comes to Indiana basketball. So that's just a great foundation to be able to build around, and somebody that you can depend on consistently to play like that, because that's not something fake. That's who he is, and that's who he's become. He's got himself in tip-top shape. He outruns every big. He outworks every big. If you look at that, the follow-up that put him on the line to put the game into overtime, you can see him squatting down lower than the bottom man. And that's what you always say, low man wins in every situation in the game of basketball. And he just got lower than him, pushed him up right under the rim and got the rebound and got fouled and then knocked down the 2 free throws. And so that's one of the continued positive things that we saw. But we gotta continue to develop our bench. I mean, we gave up on the bench really quick. Geronimo came in, had 2 quick turnovers. He was out of there. He lost, and only pressure situations like this can determine how a coach really feels about you as a player, how much he really trusts you. So, going into the Big Ten season, you said we go to play against Nebraska, then we go to Wisconsin, where we haven't won since I was a sophomore. So, you got to be able to, you got to have other people continue to step up. Trace Jackson Davis is not going to be able to play 40 plus minutes and be successful. So a lot of good things, some things we need to work on. But like somebody said in the chat, it's probably the happiest I've ever been after a loss in a minute. I was pleased with it. You're not going to win them all. And I know Indiana fans think we're supposed to win them all, but you're just not going to win them all. You're going to have lessons from these losses. And I think this is one of the lessons for our youth.
Basketball is a lot different than football. I think we watch all the college football playoff talk, and when somebody loses, they're immediately in jeopardy of losing their spot. In basketball, you're going to lose 8, 10, 12 times. And just you have to the key to losing is learning from it. And let's see if they go out and crush Nebraska on Saturday. Let's see if they can go to the Kohl Center next week and win. AJ, what's the secret sauce? How do you win at the Kohl Center?
Man, I mean, it's I tell people all the time, it's the most boring place. You get really to get bored to death playing that type of basketball in that environment. Usually a kind of not the vibrant college atmosphere like you get at IU, like you may get at, one of these Power 5 programs, but they're effective in what they do, man. So you have to be there. Just like in the last couple of years, they've been in the games. Mm-hmm. They've been there. They just can't, make the shot or make the play that puts them over the hump. So that's what you want. You want to have an opportunity to win. And I think with the ability for this team to be able to shoot shots, take shots, and then with the offensive rebound and defensive rebound ability of Davis and Thompson, we got a good chance to even though Wisconsin got a draft pick up there that's really good, they always reload with pieces. And you have to stay patient. You have to stay in the game, Xavier, and be able to have it and give IU a chance to win the game.
Well, before we wrap it up, we'll get to this question from Matthew in the chat. Can Tamar handle the ball well enough to be a second off-the-dribble threat behind Xavier? I don't know if we know the answer to that yet. We're still learning what he can do.
Right. Yeah, we're still learning what Tamar can do. I mean, that was the first time that he was in a situation like that. I wouldn't say he would be a ball handler. I think we have enough ball handlers. So I want to see Christian Lander handling the ball more. I want to see Tamar. This is not the game where you're just going to see a lot of running out, getting dunks and layups, because that's what the zone is set up to do, is to slow you down. So, he has to learn how to play in possession basketball games like you saw today. So, he's a freshman, a lot to learn. We get excited. We get so excited. We're supposed to see everything we saw against Louisiana today against Syracuse, and it's just not feasible. So I think Tamar is going to grow from this loss, and I'm excited to see how he bounces back against Nebraska as well.
I think this is a game that maybe in a month Indiana takes care of business. Uh-huh. And I just think for the first road test, it was tough. And I know Sean's saying, here we go with all the moral victory speeches, but you're just not going to win every game. And to me, the key to Indiana is how they bounce back.
Right.
Because you're not going to go. I mean, even Gonzaga, the best team we've seen in decades, could not go undefeated last year. Right. So let's see what this team can do in the next game out. Do they learn from themselves? I look for them to keep the turnovers down next game. Right. I look for it to be somewhere in that 10 to 13 range, and then you can say, okay, they learned something from that game. And also, you're not going to face a defense like that in the Big Ten. You might face some zones, but you're never going to face a Jim Boeheim 2-3 zone. And Indiana figured it out. It was the first half just put them way in the hole, and they were able to pull themselves back. And I think if you are an optimistic Indiana fan who is willing to take a loss and look at it in the macro, this is a game that Indiana could have folded like a lawn chair and lost by 30. And instead, in a 7-minute span, they went from down 18 to a tie game.
Mhm.
And that was really impressive to me. So,
I mean, if
all
you
proven,
understand the game of basketball, you mean you can't make a decision about a team after 5 games, 6 games. If you're deciding whether a team is done or they're no good or they're no longer a top 5 team after 5 games, and you just don't understand the game of basketball. There's just no reason to even have a discussion with people that make a decision about teams, especially teams that are new, that have new coaches, have new players. You don't know what you're going to get until January, February. So, putting the hammer down and, and deciding, oh, this is a Big Ten championship team, or because there are still a lot of factors that tie into it. That factors like, who you're playing against, injuries, all these stuff tie into whether you're going to be successful. So, I think all the teams around the country are finding themselves right now. They're trying to figure out where they fit in, what their true identity is. I know Indiana is going to say our identity is defense, but you can't say that after giving up 101 points. You can't say that your identity is defense. It's like okay, it's going to be. We have to get timely stops. We have to get them when necessary. I thought like in the overtime period, you need to get a stop on Boheim in order to win this basketball game. I need somebody to switch off on somebody who can guard him. Who really need? I don't think Parker Stewart is the greatest defensive player the best defensive player on a basketball team. That mean most shooters aren't the best defenders. He's a floor stretcher, and that's what he does. So why is he guarding the other team's best basketball player? And he's 4 inches shorter than him. So these are the type of things we look at on film and say, you know what? I think I need to slide Miller over here to try to stop this guy or whoever, Trace. I don't care who it is. You got to get timely stops. You got to score score and keep yourself in the game and get stops when it's time to get stops. And we'll find out where we all stand in the end.
yeah, they have great rim protection. There's no doubt about it. But I think the on ball defense, who is I'm going to put him on their guard and shut him down type of defender. And I think in the past that had been Rob Finney. But like you said, I'm not sure he's 100% healthy.
Right.
I'm not sure he's ready for that yet.
No.
So the big question is, can Xavier stay out of foul trouble, become that guy? Is Miller Kopp that guy? Indiana still has to figure that out as we go forward. And not trying to make even more excuses for this Indiana team, but I do think this was a desperate Syracuse team. They were 3-3. ESPN labored it to death about who they had coming up with, and now I'm forgetting who it was. I know they had Villanova as well as others, but it does feel like they were the desperate team. And they were the team that came out and said, we need to get this win. And you know what? You got to tip your cap to some of the shots the Boeheims hit.
Oh, yeah, they made a lot of tough shots.
Yeah,
a lot of tough shots. Matthew made a great point, man. Armand Franklin's in Virginia. He was the guy that would get the defensive.
That's true.
Gets the defensive stop on the other team. And one thing I always noticed about Indiana over the last few years was that we never had that tough defensive minded 6'5", 6'6" wing, kind of like a Gabe Brown or
I
Jay
think that could be Tamar though at some point.
Eventually, it'll be Tamar. That's why I say this team is not reaching its potential and not even close to reaching its true potential. And it may come in 2 years. It may not be this year where they reach that upper echelon of having that. Tamar's probably 180 pounds soaking wet. Like he's the prototypical wing, but he's not ready for that battle yet.
Yeah.
Competitively and mentally he is, but physically it's a different story. So I think in order for Indiana to get to that next upper echelon, if you look at the Dukes and you look at the Gonzagas and you look at the top teams, even Purdue, you look at their wing position, that guard or those wings are multi-purpose players. They defend, they run, they play pick and roll, they pass well out of pick and roll, they can shoot the basketball, they get to the free throw line. And that's something we're kind of missing. We got guys that can shoot. Now we got some guys on the wing that can stretch. But what about that guy that can shot fake, get to the rim, and dunk on you? What about that Victor Oladipo type,
Mhm.
wing? You know what I mean? So that's
Mhm.
kind of what you need in the Big Ten. I remember when I played, it was Michigan State was the top dog, and they had Morris Peterson on the wing, running at 6'6", 6'7", shooting threes, offensive rebounding. And we know in my senior year, we just didn't have a wing that could compete with that on a nightly basis. We could beat them,
Yeah.
but in order to be champions, you got to be able to do that on a nightly basis. I think that's the next step. They have the inside presence in TJD. They have the all-purpose player in Race Thompson. They have, they're still finding their way at the point guard position because X can't stay on the floor. So that's why I think the development of Lander is going to be important. But then we got a couple of shooters, on the wing. But I look at that Jordan Geronimo as that kind of guy.
He could be, yeah.
He has to get out of that 4 position and get more into that 3 position to be that guy. So when we shoot a corner three, it's not just Trace getting in position for offensive rebound. It's Jordan. It's that wing to lay that thing up. So I think that's the next step, personnel wise, for us to reach that upper echelon.
You're saying you want Indiana to go get Paolo Banchero.
Yeah, somebody like that.
Just go snag him
I mean,
and
I'm
bring
just
him in.
looking. I've said that since when I was watching, I think Nebraska play last year with Ron Harper Jr. It was just these big guards. I'm not Nebraska, sorry, Rutgers. These bigger guards that were causing us problems. They're strong. They can post. They can get to the rim. They can shoot threes. They can rebound. They can do all of those things, man. And I'm like, that's where the game is now with guys like that defensively. And I heard Jimmy Dykes talking about. I didn't see the game against Manhattan, but we said we struggled against the middle pick and roll. But when you're able to just switch the middle pick and roll, it eliminates it. And you're able to just guard your yard. You got 5 guys that can switch it a lot of the times. If and TJD doesn't foul, I think they said he had 8 fouls.
He's had 10 fouls in his first 7 games.
10 fouls. So it's like, all right, we need to work on him guarding the yard a little bit and see. So we don't have to rotate. So we don't have to do anything special. And then when our guard gets switched onto a big, he can battle and rebound. So, and I think that's the next step for Indiana to take to the next level.
A lot of learning, I hope, will come from this game. And I think you saw flashes of what this team can be. You also saw flashes of the cellar floor, and they can't have those. Like you said, elementary type turnovers.
Yeah, man. Just touch fouls, hugging people. What are you doing?
Yeah,
get back, man.
Fouls 93 feet from the basket. Yeah, that type of stuff can't happen. But they'll get an opportunity at home against Nebraska Saturday. I think that'll be a great get-right, bounce-back game. And then the ultimate test for Indiana basketball over the past 3 decades is, can you win the Kohl Center? And we'll find out next Wednesday. But AJ, always good. We got plenty. I was taking notes at halftime saying, gosh, what are we going to talk about? This game's a mess. You even saw the title I originally put on this thing. I was not excited about the way that game was going. And we ended up having 43 minutes of content to talk about. So appreciate all of you who are watching and all of those who stopped by. And thanks to those who entered in the chat as well. We'll try and do this more often as the season goes on, because we know the Hoosier faithful, they love to talk about their team. So we'll try and do this more often. But AJ, always a blast. Thanks so much for hopping on. Didn't think we'd be on this late, but double overtime will do that to you.
All good, man. Thank everybody for coming through, Matt. Even negative Sean. I see you, Sean. Come through, man, and get us riled up and keep bringing that action. And when we back up top, we want you to come back on the show too. But no, thank everybody for joining us, man. And we'll do this more often and have some fun talking Indiana basketball.
Absolutely. I'm just happy we didn't have the 9:30 start time. So at least we're done now. All right. That's AJ Guyton. I'm Austin Render. This has been House of Hoosier podcast. We'll talk to you guys next week.